Tonight, police make a raft of arrests across the mid-north as they clamp down on drug trafficking. And Broken Hill's mayor potentially facing a no-confidence motion.
This is Southern Cross News with Fraser Goldsworthy.
Good evening. Police across the mid-north are turning up the heat on illicit drugs, targeting dealers, suppliers and manufacturers in Port Pirie and the surrounding region. The campaign has led to a dozen arrests and large drug-related seizures.
51 premises searched in just 42 days. The results alarming to police.
We see 73 cannabis plants, together with a quantity of dried cannabis. We had approximately 56 grams of methamphetamine that we took from the community that was destined to go onto the streets.
Officers put 95 street deals to an end, seizing over $4 grand in cash relating to drug sales and a haul of drug paraphernalia. 19 bongs, which is used to smoke cannabis, and 17 ice pipes, which is generally used for smoking of methamphetamine, were all seized as a result of the activity over the last 2 months. Police say they're taking the hard line against people who seek to live off and profit from the harm they're causing the community.
12 arrests have been made. 6 people were arrested for possessing methamphetamine for sale, 2 for trafficking in a controlled drug, 3 for cultivating cannabis and 1 for possessing cocaine for sale.
Police are calling upon anyone with any suspicions or information about illicit drug activity in the community to contact Crime Stoppers immediately, saying most of this has come about thanks to anonymous tip-offs from the public.
A house that has no occupants coming and going on a regular day and night basis. The blinds may be pulled down, there could be plastic over the windows on the inside.
Rachel Nell, Southern Cross News.
A taxi driver has been caught speeding and driving over the blood alcohol limit in Port Lincoln. At 6:30 last night, officers pulled over the taxi, which was carrying passengers at the time on the Lincoln Highway, when the driver allegedly blew a reading of .055. Taxi drivers are banned from having any alcohol in their system while working. He was reported for drink driving and will face court at a later date. Farmers on the Eyre Peninsula are becoming increasingly anxious as dry weather conditions linger. Some have already begun dry seeding in the hopes the heavens will open, but the Weather Bureau isn't promising any good news.
Farmers hopeful for rain on the way in May.
Rainfall forecast hasn't eventuated, or the forecast that we were anticipating hasn't forecast, and so the ground's drying out pretty quick.
Cereal growers across the region are already beginning to sow their seeds for this year's crop season, but anticipated rain hasn't arrived. Yellana farmer Mark Modra has already sown 300 hectares of barley and wheat. He's remaining optimistic.
We always need a good season, but yeah, we're hopeful for a good rainfall event in May, and that will kick us away, and hopefully we'll be able to get some good crops at the end of it.
However, the Weather Bureau predicts high rainfall next month may not be on the way.
For the next month through South Australia, more generally, Eyre Peninsula as well, slight push towards, unfortunately, slightly drier than normal conditions.
Some areas, though, could expect a sprinkle later in the week.
Getting into later next week, we should see a little bit of rain in that area around Port Lincoln. Could be just a few millimetres, but there's some chance that we could get up 10-15 millimetres or so.
And it looks like the unseasonably warm temperatures around the region is set to continue.
In terms of temperatures, the outlook is also very warm. So at least that'll keep the soils a bit warmer and keep the growth, or the period of good growth before winter, open until we get some of that much needed rain.
Casey Trelaw, Southern Cross News.
Broken Hill councillors will tonight vote on a no-confidence motion against the city's mayor, Daria Turley. Patrick Reinke has more.
At last month's meeting, Councillor Ron Page said the city's mayor did not honour her election promise to introduce standing committees of council. In his motion set for tonight's meeting, Mr Page said the lack of standing committees has left councillors with little input into council's decision-making process. He claims the issue, combined with only one public question time where speakers can only talk about agenda items and notice must be given, means the community has even less input. He said the mayor's failure to introduce the standing committees has meant councillors have little involvement in setting the budget. Instead, it's limited to a presentation from management. In a nutshell, standing committees allow councillors to make and recommend decisions before it goes to the monthly meeting, allowing for more community input. As it stands, the current setup gives councillors portfolios to manage, which reportedly does not provide them with all the information on issues outside the portfolio. Councillor Tom Kennedy said he could support the motion if the Mayor doesn't do anything to follow through on her election promise. Councillor Bob Allgate said the motion of no confidence may not be the right step and believes the standing committee should be reintroduced. Mr Page says he does regret having to put the motion forward, but if no action is taken, he is concerned it will result in a poor future outcome for the city.
Whyalla Council is turning to the public in a bid to keep on top of vandalism around town. It wants residents to help reduce the problem with concerns too much of ratepayers' money is being spent on fixing the damage.
Whyalla's public spaces have changed throughout the years, yet vandalism never seems to disappear. It's a source of frustration to council in terms of wasted time and money.
Some elements of our community enjoy tearing it down. So I'd estimate, John, about $250,000 is spent out of ratepayers' funds.
And ratepayers are being asked to help stamp it out. Council agreed at Monday's meeting to roll out a campaign, encouraging the public to speak up when they spot something amiss.
Report the vandalism, the graffiti, the destruction of property to us so that we can, one, respond really quickly.
If caught, those involved should expect police action.
They can actually take it on board and try and follow through to catch and deal with this element of the community.
The cost of vandalism is around 2% of what council collects in rates from locals. It's money Mr Cowley says could be better spent. He also says public property belongs to the public, and through using social media, they can continue to enjoy what's on offer.
The community are a massive set of eyes and ears around town that hopefully discourages these elements.
Council says it can be alerted a number of ways. Traditionally, methods like a phone call are welcomed, but also on social media. John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
After the break, works get underway on the Wallaroo Shores Resort development. Details next. A $220 million tourist resort and residential development project is underway on York Peninsula. Construction has begun on the first stage of Wallaroo Shores, which is expected to be complete by the end of next year.
Turning the old smelting site to a holiday destination of the future. The council's hoping the resort will reinvigorate the town with what's been an eyesore for a number of years.
Wallaroo Shores are building all their infrastructure for their new 100 townhouse tourist park.
Wallaroo Shores will feature a large residential estate behind, attracting future investments in the region.
The whole site is somewhere in the order of $220 million investment. So the part we see behind us is the initial $10 million for a lot of the infrastructure.
The five-star resort will include a function centre, meeting facilities, a day spa and a convenience store. And it'll all be open to the public.
Resort operated by the Mantra Group, so it'll have a cafe, a restaurant, I believe it might even have a cinema.
Nearly 1,000 full-time jobs for locals over a 10-year period will be on offer, providing a much-needed boost to the town's economy as well.
Tourism dollar multiplies through the community because those people just don't sit in their room. They get out and about and visit all our other facilities. It's
hoped the resort will be up and running within 18 months, with Stage 1 on track for completion later this year. Rachel Nell, Southern Cross News.
South Australia's Energy Minister Dan Van Holst Pelican has vowed to keep the state's best interests at heart before agreeing to the terms of the National Energy Guarantee. He says the state government's new energy policy must be able to fit into the federal plan.
It's the federal plan that might be the blueprint to solving the state's electricity woes.
What's good for South Australian electricity consumers is affordable, reliable electricity and continuing to reduce pollution from electricity generation.
The National Energy Guarantee is focused on reducing emissions and requires retailers to have a mixture of renewable and baseload electricity. The Energy Minister says the 26% emissions target is neither here nor there.
We should reduce emissions as much as possible so long as consumers are not punished with unacceptably high prices or lack of reliability.
The Liberal government is hoping the guarantee will fit into its new energy policy, which would see an interconnection with New South Wales, allowing it to take advantage of an overabundance of renewables.
And we would also have some security to be able to access electricity from New South Wales for our consumers when we are short.
It wants more details,
so that I can ascertain whether it would be in South Australia's best interest.
It says the best outcome is to see the details of the NEG are created in consultation with the states and include the states' needs. Garth Burley, Southern Cross News.
The state's sardine industry is looking to prove it's one of the most sustainable bodies in the world. The fishery is currently undergoing an internationally recognised assessment process to ensure its longevity.
Seafood is one of the region's most iconic industries, and sardine fishers are looking to make sure it's a reputation that can be held around the world.
I decided to undergo the Marine Stewardship Council certification, so currently it's acknowledged worldwide as the best certification you can get, at least in terms of fishing.
It's a global program that to date has certified over 300 fisheries in over 40 countries around the world.
The fishery is currently in the assessment process, which can take between 12 to 18 months. 3 areas will be under the microscope: the impact on environment, the health of the species and effective fishery management.
We've really built up a culture of sustainability within the organisation, and MSC seems to be a logical extension of that.
We're very excited about the sardine fishery coming into full assessment.
Fishers say the certification would also help in terms of eco-labelling.
We've been sustainably harvesting since 1991. That's effectively been given to us because of the strong peer-reviewed science that we operate off of.
Casey Trelaw, Southern Cross News.
Still to come tonight, Broken Hill destined for the silver screen once again. That story next. Broken Hill and the surrounding area will once again be heading for the big screen in an upcoming Australian action movie. The film, Locusts, is a gritty suspense drama and a modern noir western all rolled into one.
It's only a promotional poster right now, but those behind the big screen flick are excited for what's to come.
Psychological thriller, but with a lot of cool action sequences.
Locust is being touted as an Aussie No Country for Old Men, focusing on a man returning to his hometown for his father's funeral. He soon finds out it's not a simple trip back home and falls into trouble.
He discovers that he can't leave town unless he has to do a few things that are morally questionable. So one bad event leads to the next, and sort of body counts build up.
Heath and his team came to the region last month for location scouting and says the region was perfect.
A lot of the locations were sort of similar to what was written in the script, which was just fortuitous. There's been some awesome movies made in Broken Hill, so it was a bit of a no-brainer for us.
The crew will be working with local filmmakers and the community to help bring the movie together. Production is set to start in early July.
Yeah, by seeing some of the test footage we did, it's really amazing backdrop. It's going to bring a real cinematic element to the film. So yeah, we can't wait to get out there. And same with the actors as well.
Patrick Ryanke, Southern Cross News.
Change of pace, time now for fishing tips.
Look, another week around the Gulf Fishing Tips from Port Pirie. I cannot believe over the last weekend the snapper that's been brought into this place. It was unbelievable. Great time to be out and amongst them. We've still got some yellowfin whiting. They're just starting to thin out a lot, but we still have them, so that's a great thing. Blue swimmer crabs are still in good runs. The snook is still there in front of the island. There's plenty of things to be happening at this particular time. I think the weather's going to cool down a little bit over the weekend, so with my chance, if you had a nice flat day, perhaps head out towards the Illusion, you'll get yourself a big knobber.
G'day and welcome to this week's fishing tips from Port Augusta, Jewel North. Well, it's nearly the end of April and we've had probably one day of winter. Crabs are still there. The King George whiting is starting to show up around there. The shitties are starting to move out, so the whiting is starting to get a bit more of the bait. There are some squid down on the shacks in better numbers, but also around Letty Spit Stick during the day they're getting some big squid. That's all we have from the Jewel North. Now it's over to Whyalla.
Good numbers of crabs around Whyalla. Best to get in the water and have a crack at those before they move out. The water temperature is starting to drop now, so it won't be long we won't have those crabs around. There's still some good size down towards Mount Young, have been the best grounds, and further down towards Cowlard's Landing. The squid have moved in really good numbers, guys, and there's some great size squid out there amongst them. Get in amongst those. They've been down towards the Mount Young grounds as well. King George whiting in the same areas. If you're prepared to travel a little further south, down towards Menini Beach and the Cowlard's Landing's been holding some really good size whiting. A lot of the fish up into the mid 40 centimetre range, so get amongst those. For the snapper across Whyalla, it's been very hit and miss from the rip. There has been some nice fish after dark coming from the Commando area.
G'day, welcome to this week's fishing tips from Port Lincoln. Starting up at Tumby Bay, there's been a big mixed bag up there. Out of the group, they've been getting squid, whiting, snook, garfish, and even a few rugger snapper. Inshore, it's mainly been squid around the town jetty and a few yellowfin whiting down south of the town. Moving down into Port Lincoln itself, there's been some great catches of squid late in the evenings. The town jetty has been doing really well. Snook's Landing and also Snapper Point have also been really productive. The whiting catches have been a little bit lean, the Dodge Tide over the weekend, but this week they should start to improve. Places like Carcass Rock and Horse Rock are going to be better places to try. There's been some fish down at Taylor's and also Thistle Island as well. Offshore, there's been some Nanagai and snapper down the passage. The tuna are really starting to thin out, but there's been a few fish at the cabbage patch. That's it for this week. We'll see you again next week.
Stay with us after the break. Amy has your local weather, and it appears the sun has returned to the Gulf, Amy.
That it has, Fraser, and the run of fine weather is set to continue. I'll have all the details next. Welcome back. It was certainly a beautiful day around all centres today. Sunny and 24 in Port Augusta and Port Perry. Broken Hill reached 23, while Adelaide also experienced a mostly sunny day in the 20s. Taking a look at the satellite now, and showers and thunderstorms over the central and southern areas will continue due to that cold front and trough passing over. Clear skies in the southwest. If you're kick-starting the weekend on the waters, expect easterly winds tomorrow that will shift southeasterly up to 15 knots. Seas will reach 1.5 metres, with the sun rising at 6:50 and sunset at 5:44. And many thanks to Ian, who is sending this great shot of showers over Streaky Bay. We are loving your weather photos, and if you have one you'd like to share, you can email it to us at localnews@sca.com.au. Now looking at Friday's forecast, and the sun is here to stay. Port Perry is set to see a top of 26, as is Port Augusta. Overnight temperatures are cooling down in most parts. However, all other districts can expect sun with maximums in the 20s. Heading into early next week, and the sun will hang around in Port Lincoln, reaching 25 on Monday. Cleve will also experience similar conditions, as will Woodner, with tops of 27. Nothing but sunshine in Whyalla and Kadina, with temperatures in the mid-20s. Port Augusta will be a couple of degrees warmer, with the mercury also rising to 27. Port Pirie can also expect warm days as school returns next week. Sunny and clear, however, maximums will sit in the low 20s, with a similar forecast for Broken Hill. So Fraser, a beautiful sunny weekend ahead before school heads back and we all start a new working week.
A great weekend ahead. Thanks, Amy. And that's all the news to now. Thanks for your company. Good night.